I got into real estate law at probably the worst time possible, which was the 2010s when the market had tanked. I was living in the city of Chicago and literally the cranes had stopped. But I worked on a massive project that was like time just all consuming, and I fell in love with the dirt aspect of it, and it grew from there. And so my favorite thing about real estate work is the tangibility of it. I loved driving through the city of Chicago and being able to point out buildings that either we built or redid, or my imprint on the city, and knowing that that will be there for years to come. And I look forward to doing that again in the Metro Detroit area. My husband and I both grew up in the Metro Detroit area. My family home is actually within a mile of our Detroit office. So I left Detroit and went to law school in Chicago over a decade ago, always with the eye of potentially coming back. And then after getting into real estate and watching the market rebound a little bit, it provided an opportunity at this time to go back and be able to do just that. We're both thrilled to be raising our family in Detroit. We're in the same neighborhoods that we grew up in and enjoying the same things that we did in our childhood. So it's been a really nice transition. We're glad to be home. So I have a young son. He's turning 3 next month. And we like to do all the typical things. Love to go to the park and the playground. Love to take in the cultural activities, whether it's the Children's Museum or bless so the Detroit Institute of Art, although we've taken him there a few times. We like just doing the typical things. Looking forward to being back in the Great Lakes State, where there will probably be a lot of boating and beach time and all of that. We have a place up in northern Michigan that we like to go to during the summers quite frequently too. So that's often where you'll find me in the warmer months. I didn't start out knowing I was going to be in the legal field. I was an English major, as many of us were in undergrad, with a particular focus in creative writing. I did grow up, however, around the legal field because I often worked in the summers and on vacations for my father, who is in the professional service world. So I had some exposure to it, and at some point in my early 20s, I had to decide whether I was going to commit to the MFA route and do that, or find something else to do. I decided to take the LSAT, liked it. Weirdly, and pursued law school, which I honestly fell in love with, and came out to practice and realized that actually practicing law, especially at the transactional side, was something I really enjoyed doing, and was something that I enjoyed getting up in the morning and going to work to do. A lot of my clients are mid or small market clients that, even though I am a quote-unquote real estate attorney by trade, I'm also sort of their general counsel. So it's a lot of putting out fires or answering the day-to-day questions, and that could be anything from a mechanics lien issue to a typical acquisition disposition to potentially financing, or sometimes finding equity, whether that's typical traditional equity or investors, or finding other perhaps outside investors that might be a little bit outside the box. A couple of words that my clients would use to describe me are probably responsive, which I know you hear all the time, but I think it's important. The last thing I do before I go to bed is check my phone to make sure there's nothing that I'm walking into the next morning. The other thing is attention to detail. I think as lawyers, we, as a skill set, need to pay attention to those things that other people might gloss over. And certainly I think that's a value add for clients to know that they've got somebody on it that are going to pay attention to not only the big picture, but the minutia as well.